This is a moderate podcast because we're saying nice things about Emily Koski, who got ran out of the race for being DSA. Who would have guessed in 2025 Emily Koski would get run out of the race because she was too DSA?
Again, rich assholes. Rich assholes have no compunction about like facts. It's just like, what do we need to make sure we get our? And those are the people who are attacking her. You know, these PACs, they're made up of people who are like, you know, you are either 100% with us or we will come after you.
We're rolling. We're rolling.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
This is the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Joining me today is somebody I've wanted to talk to on this podcast for so long. It's D.A. Bullock, a filmmaker and activist, hosts a weekly radio show on KFAI called No Name in the Street. Very into music, I'm learning. Music is a part of that show, music and politics.
Absolutely. It's called No Name in the Street, named after James Baldwin's book of essays. And it is, I subtitle it Politics, Music, Roots, and Culture, because I get a lot of my politics out of culture, and music is part of that, and has certainly been a part of my whole civil rights and social awareness throughout my lifetime. So I love the music. I'm not a musician, so I love it even more because I just admire people who can do that.
People are probably familiar with your posts to Blue Sky and elsewhere at Bully Creative. And what people may not know about you is what DA stands for. I recently learned what DA stands for.
D.A. Bullock, acronym for dumbass.
I didn't know that. I had no idea the whole time.
My mom didn't know that either. She named me Daryl Anthony Bullock, and I got renamed by the good Reverend.
So when I was clipping that audio, I went back and I'll play a little bit longer clip because it made me have so many more questions about what's going on here.
D.A. Bullock, acronym for dumbass. That trick don't want to see me, because when he rolled up on Victor Martinez's house and I rolled out on him, I was this close on him. He get that close on me, I'm knocking him flat out. He don't want that. He talk all that noise. No. Y'all don't want to see me.
That sounds very serious to me. So first of all, you're at Victor Martinez's house.
I'm laughing. Well, firstly, it's amazing how much the Reverend contradicts himself even in that own statement. If I would have rolled up on him when he rolled up on me, like he's just. So there's context to all of that. And the first thing I say is, you know, he was talking to his flock. I don't know what you want to call it. It was like a people that he had convened online to defend him for some of his indefensible acts. So, you know, that's his way of sort of deflecting, and then he starts talking about other people and starts, you know, denigrating other people. And I was one of them because somebody must have asked him about me, because I during the time when
it's like a Facebook live stream.
Yeah, during the time when he was doing all of this homophobic ranting and threatening council members, you know, I was online, obviously talking about how, you know, that's not a way for anyone to act who has a great deal of influence and status in North Minneapolis, especially amongst Black folks. And he's a grown man, and he shouldn't be acting like that. So he took that as a chance to insult me, and then recollect when we did meet face to face. And in fact, he did not knock me the F out. He didn't even try me, because he's not the type. He'll talk a big game, but when it comes down to actual, and we're old men. Like, there's no reason why we should be out there having fisticuffs. But the thing was, he showed up. I was there to interview Victor Martinez when he was running for office for Ward 5 council member, which, you know, all the rest of the people who were running had made themselves available. And in fact, Victor and I had a conversation about me coming by there to talk to him. But during the course of that time, he calls McAfee and Lisa Clemens to come defend him from being interviewed. And that was what transpired afterward.
So I am so disappointed about how like Victor Martinez's like campaign apparatus is kind of like filtered through these other city council campaigns this year, like in Ward 12. What are Victor Martinez's people doing in Ward 12 or Ward 8? Ward 8 wants nothing to do with Victor Martinez's people.
Well, it's fascinating. You know, even some of Victor Martinez's supporters want nothing to do with Victor Martinez, including Mayor Frey, who has canceled appearances that it was found out that Victor was going to be there with him. So, you know, I think that is about sort of the subversive part of politics in the city of Minneapolis, where, you know, seemingly liberal, open-minded people are often employed in some of the tactics of conservative, often regressive candidates and people and money and supporters, etc.
How are you feeling about Minneapolis lately? Because thinking about my part of the city, I was feeling pretty good about like Uptown on the upswing. I feel like we were doing better. Like obviously Trump on the national level is kind of putting a downer on everything. But like, where do you think we are right now? How do you feel about the city?
I mean, I think one of the great things about the Twin Cities and Minneapolis in particular is it's always been a great place, like especially relative to the rest of the country, with a lot of advantages. And those advantages remain even when we're going through a struggle, which the whole nation was going through at the time, and, you know, continues to go through some of those cycles of those struggles. And I think Minneapolis has an outsized view of how much they are in crisis, and then a downsized view of some of the real fundamental things that need to change, including leadership that would actually allow us to be this great city that we're all sort of invested in being. So I feel like we're on an upswing, but I feel like the whole nation is on an upswing. I feel like despite our national leadership, the people in this nation still have some fundamental parts to them that I think we can rely on to defend democracy, to fight back against some of the things that we're faced with. Hopefully, you know, I'm still hopeful. I'm an optimistic person. You wouldn't know that from my post, but I am.
Why are you such a downer online?
Downer online? I'm just speaking facts online, and it's sort of the way those platforms are built, is that you sort of get into cycles where the things that you are often, because I post as much about music and culture as I do about politics, but those aren't the things that people know you for, you know, obviously. Right. The algorithm doesn't work like that. It doesn't work about my love of, you know, Shaka Khan's voice. Like, nobody cares about that, right?
So it's been 5 years since George Floyd was murdered. I feel so old, so tired.
Absolutely.
What's your assessment of where we are in that direction? Like policing, public safety, crime politics? Do you feel like we have made progress?
Well, I'll answer it like this. We are 32 million, more than $32 million poorer as based on these fake PTSD settlements that we've given out to over 200 former MPD officers. We're $70 million in the hole for abuse and misconduct settlements that we've had to pay out as a self-insured city. And I don't see us being fundamentally better off in terms of our police force. We have a consent decree that is going nowhere, and then we don't have the leadership who are prepared to do the things that they say they're supposedly doing. But everything that they proposed that I've seen in the list of reforms were things that were in place in a different like configuration before George Floyd was killed. So like reform committees and police accountability committees, we had that before George Floyd was murdered. And so, I don't see us having gained much progress from my perspective.
We have a new, I don't even know what the new Police Oversight Commission is called. I have forgotten what the acronym because it changed. We had the old one.
Which had changed over from another old one.
Right. And the way that one ended is that they stopped appointing new people to it. And so it would never make quorum. And so now people are resigning from this one. And I get the sense that it's like, it feels like I am here for no reason kind of thing.
Right.
Like that's why people are resigning, and they can't make quorum. They had to cancel a recent meeting because of that. So it's that's a little frustrating.
Well, what's unfortunate about police reform in general, and especially in this city, is the people themselves have a good faith belief in it. Like they actually want to believe that it can be reformed. So they get involved. They get on these commissions and things like that. But then the cynical politics and leadership sort of dilutes that. We see the same thing with the Office of Community Safety, whatever we call that now. Like when a politician appoints like political patronage people to be in charge of these things, because they don't necessarily care about whether they work or not. So then they'll, all their political supporters get the contracts and get the jobs. And that's what McAfee was so upset about, because his contract, his bag was in jeopardy. His money was in jeopardy. That's what made him, apoplectic about the whole deal. But he was in that position based on his political support of Mayor Frey. So the point being, all of these so-called reforms, they're only as good as, that whole idea of garbage in, garbage out. They're only as good as the real good faith of how they're set up, and the real good faith of police being willing to engage in it in a way that is accountable and says, if they have made mistakes, or they have done things that have been abusive, or they have done things that we've had to pay out of pocket for, there has to be acknowledgement of that and an actual real point of change. And I haven't seen that. I haven't even seen that from a new chief of police. It seems like the same cycles of the same kind of thing.
I've been thinking a lot about the backlash to the backlash. Like I thought by 2025 we might be past it. I thought, okay, 2021, of course, the topic was going to be a big fear-based election. Maybe 2023, and we actually elected a progressive council in 2023. I was kind of surprised we got over that 2021 dynamic a little quick, and now it feels like it's coming back harder in 2025, even though crime is down, police budget is way up, staffing chart is finally up. I just saw a rich asshole shove Walter Mondale's son at the Ward 7 convention.
Right.
The most aggrieved, hair trigger, ready to snap people in the city are the safest and wealthiest people. Like backlash politics is like it's still with us, and like
still with us
with a vengeance in 2025. Is that surprising to you, or?
It's not surprising to me, unfortunately, because I feel like rich assholes have always been the most, forceful and recalcitrant and always most resistant to change for the well-being of the rest of us, and always, again, like just totally sort of imagining their level of being unsafe, and imagining their level of all these things that are supposedly crisis and challenges for our city, where, there are actually people out there suffering, or actually people out there who are unsafe, but again, they've always had this ability to grab a larger portion, a disproportional amount of the public conversation. And I believe it's because, they feed into police budgets, but police feed into their sort of the propaganda they need in order to propagate their political aims. And their political aims are mostly about We would need a handful of people who we trust as rich assholes to run this city. We don't need to hear from young people. We don't need to hear from these leftists. We don't need to hear from all these activists. We don't need to hear from people who are talking about reform, as long as MPD does the job that we want them to do, which is protect my property, make sure my property values stay high, make sure those people that I'm afraid of for whatever reason stay on that side of the city and are relegated to that sort of geography. And as long as those things are intact, then they are like, yes, this is what we pay for, and we pay. So we are the arbiters of what is public safety.
Do you have any thoughts about the mayoral candidates? Do you have one that you like yet?
I like Fateh and I like DeWayne. Sorry for using their colloquial name. Maybe I should be more official. And I like parts about Koski's campaign too. And unfortunately, we don't have that candidate anymore. But I definitely like Fateh's focus on workers and labor and the things that made up the labor part of the DFL party that we often forget about, that there is a term about labor and work and workers and valuing workers. And I love the work he's done in the legislature, protecting rideshare workers. I think that's important work because it's leading work. It's work that you look for in a leader. And I'm always looking for visionaries and being leaders. And I like the vision of Davis as well about how to bring the city back together and how to truly listen to people and work with people. And I like that kind of outsider into politics, because I think we've done enough politics as usual.
This is a moderate podcast because we're saying nice things about Emily Koski, who got ran out of the race for being DSA. Who would have guessed in 2025 Emily Koski would get run out of the race because she was too DSA?
Again, rich assholes. Rich assholes have no compunction about like facts. It's just like, what do we need to make sure we get our. And those are the people who are attacking her. You know, these PACs, they're made up of people who are like, you know, you are either 100% with us or we will come after you. And so they try to paint her as DSA. She's nothing of that, which to her detriment, in my opinion, you know, again, but that's just my opinion. But I did appreciate her ability, which I thought she was going to do, is to go after run a campaign about competence, because I think we don't talk about the competence in our leadership enough in the mayor's office. And we have a fairly incompetent and a list of, you know, things that would show that and kind of prove that. You don't have to take my opinion as law. But we've seen a fair amount of incompetence out of this mayor's administration and office in a number of issues.
Here's how low my standards were coming in. I just wanted someone who was willing to work with the council, and she was willing to work with the council. Great relationships, it appeared. Right. Didn't change her voting record or her positions much, but she was working with them. And like you said, competence and the backlash to her simply because she was in opposition to Mayor Frey this year was incredible. I would think other people would see the incompetence and be hungry for a change from someone who ideologically is not that far off from Frey. Right.
You would think so, because if you're a bottom line kind of person and you want, you know, the quote unquote the buses to run on time, or you want, you know, the development to truly you know, energize the city's tax base and you know, do all the things that people who call themselves pragmatic say that they're about, then competence should be your number one issue. And that was one of my top issues, and why I would have ranked Koski. I may not have ranked her first, but I would have ranked her, certainly.
This year we have a mayoral PAC. We have two. One of them is chaired by a Republican donor, funded by some Republican donors, managed by Frey's 2021 campaign manager, and fomenting
Motley crew.
fomenting a DSA purge. All the conventions I go to, either somebody's handing me anti-DSA lit, or a guy in Ward 7 gets up to defend the Republican delegate who was in attendance.
Right.
And in a different convention, they're like purging 50 plus Wansley supporters from the DFL convention so that they can try to get her opponent endorsed.
I mean, it's extraordinary in a time where we are seeing the effects of conservatism writ large, Project 2025 writ large, seeing all the effects of this denigration of any idea outside of like stark conservatism. And we're seeing it, play out, and it's leaning into authoritarianism. And yet and still we have people in the city who are trying to run that playbook against a DSA, which is only a collection of mostly younger people who have an idea about sharing, being egalitarian, sort of spreading the wealth. The Paul Wellstone is like a saint in this region, this place, and like his most famous quote. That is being denigrated in the face of this denigration of DSA, which I think is really silly, and it's also it speaks to lack of leadership again. Like, we have a leadership void, and it's unfortunate that we keep reelecting some of these people who play right into this cynical thing.
Let me see if I can get the Paul Wellstone quote correctly. You correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
We all do better when it stays the same for me.
That's the Paul Wellbucks, or the Paul Daddy Wellbucks version of it. Yeah.
My friend made a bunch of stickers that said that,
Yeah.
and I would post them. I posted a few of them in Ward 7 just for fun.
Right. It's like my making fun of We Love Minneapolis. It's like we love to raid Minneapolis of its sweet cash as we go back to our suburbs and exurbs.
And they're using. Sometimes I worry about this because when I would go to like budget meetings, public meetings, where like the mayor would host a meeting about the budget and taxes, and people were very concerned about like keeping their taxes low. And policing wasn't even on people's radar, even in Southwest. It wasn't the typical urban thing where the privileged white people were very concerned about crime in Minneapolis. Right. And now it is a constant concern. And I'm worried it's being used as a wedge, obviously, tale as old as time, to boost candidates who are hostile to renter protections and labor protections, all those standard DFL things. We've got candidates this year who are saying absolutely no additional renter protections, not even
right.
the tiniest little protection for renters in
right.
a 50% renter city. Are you concerned about the wedge aspect? How do we like beat that back?
Absolutely, I'm concerned about it because I feel like a conservative politic is always going to use every opportunity. They're like opportunistic across the board, right? So they will use like a fear-based campaign to wedge into every other issue, right? Like, and then we'll bring in people that we think we would consider to be liberal or moderate or whatever, to sort of be the fuel or the voice of that campaigning. So it's a very dangerous thing, and it's a very slippery slope for us to lose all our values entirely and be, a majority liberal democratic city run by Republicans and the Charter Commission, right? Like, because that's their political tactic across the country, is a small minority rule, and to make sure you gain the system as much as possible to make that happen. And we're realizing that here. And if people don't like snap out of it and just, you don't have to have love for the DSA, but you do need to snap the fuck out of like your fog and see what is going on right now. And reclaim your party. If that is your party, if you belong to you're a proud DFLer and you've been there forever, you must reclaim your party from this. What is an insurgency? A well-funded insurgency.
Yeah, when false charges of you're DSA, you're a radical leftist, are used against people like Emily Koski or Katie Cashman, like, yeah,
Right. You should analyze both the falseness of that charge, but then also analyze why do they think they can game you with that fear tactic? Like, why are you so afraid of the DSA? Like, what about the DSA is so, makes you tingle inside and go run inside and close your doors? It's like there's nothing in it that they should be able to game you with, unless you are. It resonates with you somewhere. So that's another like sort of internal question we got to ask ourselves is like, why do these fear tactics work on me if they work on you?
right. Do you have thoughts on any city council awards, candidates, anything you'd like to say about that?
Well, I probably got a lot of different thoughts. My thought goes to Soren Stevenson in Ward 8, even though I'm not a Ward 8 resident. And the reason being, I think it sort of typifies what I was talking about a lack of leadership, because it plays into the mayoral race. I'm just really like shocked like that we're not having more conversation about Soren. And so Soren lost eyesight based on police abuse from MPD. MPD officer Benjamin Bauer, shot him in the face. 3 weeks earlier, had shot another young person, 19-year-old Ethan Marks, I believe his name was, in the face, and traumatic brain injury, et cetera, et cetera. From my understanding, Benjamin Bauer he was a SWAT officer at the time, so they are supposed to be the most highly trained officers in our city. My understanding, Benjamin Bauer is still on MPD, is still part of MPD. And the idea that we're not talking about that, the idea that the mayor has not mentioned this person by name or what he plans to do in terms of, and the case, the disciplinary case is still open, which is another like symbol of just how much folly that is. This whole like idea that we're gonna really do discipline right now. We have a current person in MPD that you could say, well, what's going to happen with Benjamin Bauer? He shot. We have a candidate running for office, city council, who he shot in the face, assaulted. He wasn't charged. He wasn't fired. The mayor has never uttered his name or anything about the case itself. Like, if that's not a lack of leadership, if that's not a lack of competency, the chief of police then is walking around hawking a book, doing a PR tour, talking about how he was advancing justice. And he has no answer to, well, why didn't you intervene? Why didn't you fire this guy? He shot two people. Like, clearly he was out there doing it intentionally in the face with 40 millimeter rounds. Like, to me, it doesn't get more very like emblematic than that. And so that's why I think about that ward and that race often. And also because Soren almost won that race previously and lost by a handful of votes. But it was like, if someone was not like sort of the symbol of how we want to do reform or how we want to make this city more accountable and more responsible, why wouldn't it be that candidate, right? A candidate who turned around being abused by the city into wanting to serve the city. Yet we did not elect that candidate, and then we reelected the leadership that did nothing about the abuse that happened to him. And we had to pay $2 million for that case in particular. That came out of all of our pockets. Like, so where are we holding any of these people accountable for anything, right? Beyond just campaigning and a flyer that shows up in your mailer, in your mailbox, it's like, can we just hold them to being accountable or hold them to being competent, and responsible?
The deification of Chief Arradondo, this is a problem with having a long memory in local politics when you've been here
Right.
a while. Like, I remember him going to the council in the summer of 2019 talking about like the new language he had inserted into the police materials, like the sanctity of life. It was all about the sanctity of life. And he kept repeating the phrase.
And so I set out to create this vision, this North Star. That is why that is the first important message that comes forward in this transformational change. Sanctity of life is the most precious of all of our duties as peace officers. Accountability, I will be judged on that, and the community should rightfully so judge me on that. Our employees' word is everything, so they must be truthful in all they say or put in writing.
And like a year later, well, clearly you spent no energy trying to root out Derek Chauvin, a trainer, a guy who trains others to be police officers. Where was your concern for the sanctity of life? You are the police chief. And in the end, he's like remembered as our best police chief ever. Some kind of hero. And the 2021 election was run on the idea that we should all vote a certain way so that he isn't like fired. Like there was false messaging about how this would result in him being fired, or maybe he would just leave, which he did. It didn't. Everyone voted the way they were supposed to, and he still left the next day, basically.
Yeah, it's really extraordinary. The cognitive dissonance it's like we want to fool ourselves into thinking somebody is away just because they speak a certain way, they look a certain way. They have all the wrappings of what we want. And that's like our desire is for this to be fixed. But, we can't rely on that because also in that 2019 speech to the city, Chief Arradondo made it very clear that we needed 1,000 officers. That was his goal at the time. That was 2019, right? So his goal wasn't making our officers better. And this is a person who has a history in running internal affairs. So he knows where all the symbolic bodies are buried within the MPD. He knows all the bad apples. He knew all of that information. For him to go around on a book tour now and say he didn't know anything, to me is just like, you're either that incompetent or you're that, like purposefully unaware. So either way, it doesn't reflect well on him. But if people are only interested in the symbolism, that's as far as they'll go. They only go as deep as they want to go, and it's going to cost us. It's already costing us, obviously, in money and just the harm that's done. But it's going to cost us ultimately in that if we don't approach this with some real responsibility, this will happen again. And who knows what the effects are when it happens again. Like, we don't know what the spark incident will be to make for much more damage throughout the city, much more like begetting of a violence or what people call rioting. But in that, there's an uprising part of it, but then there's also the uncontrollable part of it, which is when you break the straw, or you just break that sort of final connective thing between our social contract. We don't know what happens after that. People are just kind of out there nihilistic, and the more we just play this cynical game about reform, the closer we are to that.
Do you watch a lot of TV news?
Not really. I usually I will watch their newscast later on online, like a segment or two, but I rarely watch like a whole A block, B block, C block.
I get the clips on YouTube, so I watch YouTube on my TV, and I'm subscribed to all the channels and watch a lot of YouTube. So I've become like a student of local TV news, and like we'll do 2 minutes. The reporter has never covered this story before. It's their first time talking about it. No fault of theirs, because TV news, that's what TV news is like. But so I get irritated a lot by the local news, and I wonder what irritates you about the local news?
I mean, it's propaganda. It's just being the city that we're in, we should have a local news that is somewhat skeptical about police reports. We should obviously not take them as a one source alone. It should be corroborated by other sources. We should also be questioning their motives behind. We had this the police chief was out, just guns blazing about the bandit of Tesla. Like he made a big deal about arresting this person who had damaged some Teslas, right? Like, nobody, they were doing this reporting, like salivating over this reporting about, and it's getting picked up, national news outlets, the New York Post, et cetera, et cetera. And nobody's questioning, like, Chief, why are you so adamant about arresting this one person for what is a petty crime of property damage? Like, what's the purpose of all of this, like, pomp and circumstance around it? Like you all had just arrested some kind of serial killer or something, and especially in the light of how they did nothing of the sort for Davis Mutari, who was actually being physically threatened by his neighbor, and they provided him no protection and no ability to swoop in and be the savior. So they saved Teslas potentially, but they did nothing to save Davis Mutari. And, so nobody asked that in the local press. And it's like, those are the type of disappointing things that are like, we need the press to serve their function that they are supposed to serve in this country, which is like the fourth estate. They're supposed to be the person who speaks truth to power, asks them questions, and are not worried about their access and going on a ride along with the chief of police. It's like, you're not there to serve as their PR department. You're there to serve as the press.
Yeah, the contrast with Davis Muturi and the Tesla thing was devastating.
It really is, and I sometimes I make light of it, like gallows humor type stuff, but it is sad. It's like that man was begging for some help, and they basically ignored him. And then it comes out later on that the chief was like, well, you all told me that this was handled. That was the low level of importance he placed on it. And, the whole image of him ignoring Andrea Jenkins and she's, rolling behind him, trying to talk to him as an elected official, someone we elected to have some accountability and some oversight on him. And he's walking away from her like she's nobody. He shouldn't walk away from any constituent like that, but just that was like also striking. It's like a person who represents the ward where George Floyd was murdered by your police officers. Like, none of that clicked in his mind. Like, because he's like sort of oblivious to it. He thinks his main focus and goal is to go out and champion the police department and then intimidate anybody who would call him into question. That's to me how I've seen him play out his job, and never be accountable for. He wasn't accountable for hiring Timberlake. He passed the buck on that. He hasn't been accountable for obviously what happened with Davis Muturi. He's not even accountable for how he demagogues the Hennepin County prosecutor, and they're supposed to be on the same side. But he denigrates her in a totally political way and doesn't speak to any, like they just announced this reform about eyewitness IDs, which has been problematic. We have Marvin Haynes, who his case was adjudicated because the eyewitness was so unreliable. And this is the case across the board in policing. So if you were a reform-minded chief, you would be on board with that because you're making policing better, supposedly. But he's nowhere to be found when it comes to championing so-called reforms. I'm just highly skeptical about Chief O'Hare and his boss, clearly.
I get what people find appealing about him because he comes off as a straight talker. Like, he doesn't talk like our previous police chief. A lot of police...
Because he's from Newark, right? He's from
New Jersey. He's a
right?
straight talking New Jersey guy. Like, a lot of law enforcement types will talk in cliches.
Right.
Like there's no substance there. And he comes off as very straight talking, but then he does things like when that guy was exonerated, when he basically got railroaded for murder, and the detectives were like staging parts of their investigation for a reality TV show, and they were ignoring the fact he was on security cam in St. Paul in a place like with a woman, and like there was no explanation for how he traveled that far and also dropped off of this woman, and why did he have hair, and the shooter had no hair, and he's exonerated, and I think like totally valid exoneration, like like the government has exonerated this person, and you're saying the police chief is saying no, this is bad, he should still be in jail. And also my assistant chief of community trust is one of the detectives who railroaded my community trust guy is the one who railroaded him. And I feel so disappointed because I want to like Brian O'Hara. I want to like our straight talking New Jersey police chief guy.
I mean, the straight talking is as much central casting as Arradondo's, polite, just, I'm the guy that cares about you. To me, it's all central casting. It's all like, because it all serves the same purpose, is just to get MPD a bigger budget next year and make sure you don't feel in any way that we're doing other things in our social contract that is actually influential about whether we're safe or not. That you're all entirely relying upon him and his police force and never questioning them. Never, ever questioning them. Like, the only time I've seen his ire, like, really get up is when somebody called him into question, even in a small way. Like, community members, like over in North Minneapolis, somebody called him into question. He got almost belligerent about it. And they were just asking him about, like, well, because this was about, like, the amount of high-speed chases there were in North Minneapolis, and probably still are. And, he got really, like, defensive and belligerent in that, and wanted to blame the Hennepin County attorney for, not locking them up forever, 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds and whatever, and then blame parents. And then never got around to addressing, well, why are supposedly trained police driving and chasing 12-year-olds driving cars through parks? Like, why didn't it occur to you that that's not safe for anyone? Never got around to that, but was highly offended that he would be questioned about it.
Also, on the Davis Maturi issue, when he was challenged on why he wasn't arrested, like his defense of that was, oh, this is Davis Maturi's fault. Like he instigated getting shot.
Yes.
Not a healthy reaction to that, blaming the man who was shot for why you didn't respond to months of him calling for help.
I think people, if they pay attention, they can see through the straight talk to the pattern of, sort of where Chief O'Hara hangs his hat, and it's the same place all our chiefs have hung their hat, which is, again, increasing MPD's budget, making sure they don't have to be transparent, making sure whatever crisis they're in trust, and that they can just kind of weather it and do the attrition thing and then get back to business.
So you and I and Robin Wansley and Sam Sensor-Murrah were on a panel for the War on Cars, and in the green room, there was a conversation about being from Chicago and how you don't feel like people here accept you, at least in your part of town. You don't feel accepted. I'm a Florida man, and I've been here since 2012, and I am less self-conscious about it. I will openly talk about being from Florida now because I'm just not self-conscious about it. I feel officially Minnesotan after seeing Walter Mondale's son shoved at a convention. I'm officially a Minnesotan now.
One of the sons of Minnesota, literal sons of Minnesota got shoved. And you paraphrased a little bit what I said. I didn't say I'm not accepted. What I said was it's a provincial place and there's only like so deep you can get into it if you didn't go to high school here, and people like still are like are really, really grown folks are still on that level of connection, which is fine, which is great. It's just that, anytime they need to, they remind me that especially when they're adversarial, they remind me I'm not even from here. Like, what? Okay, yeah.
I never get that.
I've gotten that before.
How long have you been here?
I got here in 2011.
Okay, so about the same time as me. Why did you come here?
I met my wife in New Orleans, where I was living at the time, and she's from here. So I moved here for love.
Okay.
The classic story.
And you don't regret it?
Of course not. I'm still in love. No.
I don't mean the marriage. I mean,
right.
Do you regret Minneapolis?
No. I mean, I feel like I'm here for a reason, and hopefully I've given something to the city that, and I've definitely gotten things from the city. I met people like the Codman family, Bill and Beverly Codman, which are like heroes of mine and the heroes of North Minneapolis, and both have passed since. And I've been able to be in a artist co-op at Juxtaposition Arts. So things like that are like invaluable and just, have changed my life, and I wouldn't change that for anything. And by and large, Minneapolis is a great, wonderful place, and it has such great potential. That's probably why I fight for it so hard and want it to be. I don't want some petty politician, in charge of a great potential of a city. I don't want some petty, person in charge of our great parks, or group of persons in charge of our great parks. Because we do have great parks that could be accessible to everyone. I don't want the Mississippi River being handled by people who are only in charge of in pursuit of their own, like, sort of advancement, or the advancement of people that they know or that they're connected to. I want everybody to have access to the great Mississippi River. It's a beautiful thing.
Were you political in other places that you've lived, like local politics?
Somewhat. I think it's just different here because of the set of circumstances. My political sort of rise, or my political notoriety, came after George Floyd was murdered, because I was on Twitter supplying a really accurate, authentic, on the ground, firsthand account, and a lot of that was not necessarily jiving with what the national news was saying or trying to promote, and it also wasn't getting deeper into the shallow surface of it, right? So I started talking about the leadership, and I started talking about, even at the time, when Chief Arradondo was being lionized, asking questions about, well, you all are lionizing him for doing the absolute least, which is testifying against Derek Chauvin in order to save his police department. Because if he wouldn't have, then the whole police department was going away. So that was self-preservation. Like, you don't make a person a saint for that. And then you dig deeper and you ask, well, why haven't you been tracking this guy? Because he has a reputation all over the city. Or this other guy, there was Tyrone Bartz, officer in North Minneapolis, who had a terrible reputation, but was still out there. Was out there, during the uprising. So if you put officers who have the worst reputations in the city, and you keep them out in the city, and then a crisis like that happens, what do you think they're going to do when they get out there? They're going to do like Vittel did when he was on tape during the Jaleel Stallings hearing, those body cams talking about, all right, boys, it's time to go out hunting, because that's their mentality. That's been their mentality. And you still have those officers on the force, it's still part of police. Some of those officers, it's still part of police culture. And the leadership is, by and large, the same. They just moved positions. They kind of shifted them up and shifted them down. It's not like O'Hara came in with 30 other middle management people from Newark. He came in and reshuffled the management at MPD. We got the same management that failed to manage any of those people out there. And so we're expecting that to be different. because we want reform, we believe in the idea of it. That's not how it works.
But don't remind me of the assistant chief of community trust.
The assistant chief of community trust. The former interim chief who has her own like vast record of various dropping of the ball when it comes to accountability is now supposedly in charge as a civilian representing us for in terms of this consent decree. Like things like that, it's like, of course you're not after a different result if you do that. Like, I'm just watching what you do. I need to hear what you say. I just watch what you do. If you do that, something like that, I know the result you're after.
Yeah. So last question, do you have any recommendations for us? It could be anything. It could be a place that you like to walk or a book or entertainment of some kind. What do you think people should give a try?
There is a book out that I think everybody should read, whether you consider yourself a leftist or a conservative or a moderate or a centrist. It's called Propaganda. It's Alex Karakanidis. He has a Greek. I hope I'm saying that correctly. But the book is just out, and he does a really great job of sort of taking us through some of the things that just kind of wash over us, and we're not really actively thinking about it, but how much propaganda is in our local and national news and press, and just how to reorientate us for our ability to suss out facts, our ability to make informed decisions, our ability to hold ideas like reform accountable. So if you believe in reform and you're not an abolitionist or you're not anything like that, and you think people like me are silly because we believe in this utopia, that's fine. You can believe that, but you also have a responsibility to interrogate your own beliefs and say, well, I believe in reform. Then you have to ask yourself, well, why do I believe in reform? What about it has delivered for me to believe in it? So, we all have a responsibility in this to say, what is our position and what is our responsibility, and do that. So I recommend reading that book. I recommend taking a walk, of course, everywhere. Get on your bike. I'm getting my bike tuned up. So the next time we do this, me and John will be out on the bike somewhere.
Ooh, we're going to do a bike ride. So when I post these bike ride videos to Twitter sometimes, like short clips, people are like, you wouldn't do that in North Minneapolis. And one of the times I was with Eric Moran in North Minneapolis when somebody replied to it.
Yes. Eric Moran, who rides around with his DJ gear on his bike. He's safe enough to ride around North Minneapolis with DJ gear, but yet some joker in Anoka is telling you can't ride your bike in North Minneapolis.
It amazes me the number of people online who are just like, their whole existence is about like having opinions about Minneapolis.
They are very invested in it. They are very invested in, I remember some guy invested in telling me that George Floyd Square was a no-go zone as I was standing in George Floyd Square. But he didn't know I was standing in George Floyd Square because I was standing by the Baha'i Center, which is a beautiful, just peaceful place. Right. And if you have never been down there, you wouldn't know, Baha'is were going back and forth all throughout the uprising, unharmed, unscathed. But again, like, it's easy enough if that resonates with people, it's easy enough to paint a picture of something, and it just confirms your bias. So that's why people have to really challenge themselves to be like, why do I believe this no-named character on on the interwebs?
Right. So plan the route for our bike ride episode.
We'll do that. Yeah. We'll go a little further north too, because I know a lot of people go near north. Plymouth, that's a nice bike route, but we'll go a little further north, like Shingle Creek. That's a nice parkway. I do that with my kids.
And thank you, DA Bullock, for having this conversation.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad we got a chance to do it. And I apologize for my tardiness in doing it, but this has been a pleasure.
Yeah, that's okay. And I'm glad that we could reveal to our audience what DA stands for.
D.A. Bullock, acronym for dumbass.
He didn't even bring the flair to it. I thought he was going to bring more flair to it. It was like, come on, man. You're a wordsmith. You can do better than that.
Do you play that clip on your radio show?
I do not.
It should be like the intro to your...
Put some music under it.
Yeah.
Do a mashup of it. No, I try not to pay much attention to Reverend McAfee on my show because I'm doing joy and all these other things and love, and I'm not doing conflict and old men fighting on the lawn, on Victor Martinez's lawn. I don't do that.
I don't know. If somebody was making fun of, if a notable figure, local figure was making fun of my name, I would play that clip all the time.
I just talk about like who's the real dumbass, the person who, fumbled their bag, the money they had from the state because they had to get their ego out there and yelling at people, and he had that in the bag and just fumbled it away because he had to let his ego ride out.
Well, thank you, D.A. Bullock. This has been the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Thank you for listening.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.